September 13th, 2023, 0342 hours. Sevastopol, Crimea, headquarters of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, 250 kilometers behind Russian lines. Protected by multiple layers of air defense, S-400 long-range systems, S-300, Pantsir point defense, naval air defense from ships in harbor. This is one of Russia's most heavily defended locations, the nerve center of Black Sea naval operations. Command staff are sleeping in their quarters. Submarines sit in dry docks undergoing maintenance. Ammunition is stored in hardened facilities. Everything critical to Russian naval power in the Black Sea is concentrated here. Everything Russia cannot afford to lose. 0342 hours. Storm Shadow cruise missile launched from Ukrainian Su-24 aircraft 250 kilometers away impacts the Black Sea Fleet headquarters building. Not a near miss. Direct hit. The missile's 450 kilogram broach warhead penetrates deep into the structure before detonating. The building partially collapses. Seconds later, more impacts. Multiple Storm Shadows hitting submarine repair facilities. Dry dock infrastructure. The strikes are precise, coordinated, devastating. When the smoke clears hours later, Black Sea Fleet headquarters is heavily damaged. 34 officers dead, including Fleet Commander Admiral Viktor Sokolov, initially reported killed, later claimed alive by Russia in obvious propaganda response. Submarine facilities are destroyed. Years of reconstruction will be needed. Billions of rubles in damage, and Russia's Black Sea Fleet command structure is decapitated. At a stroke, Ukrainian forces have reached 250 kilometers into Russian-controlled territory and struck the most sensitive military target in Crimea. The strike that Russia's air defense was supposed to prevent. The attack that wasn't supposed to be possible. But whether this represents a fundamental shift in modern warfare, where long-range precision strikes trump layered air defenses, or whether this is an exceptional success against a complacent enemy that won't be repeated, or whether both sides are now locked in escalatory spiral of strike and counterstrike with unpredictable consequences, determines what Sevastopol strikes actually mean for this war and future conflicts. This is Millfront, where we analyze the battles that change wars. Sevastopol Naval Base. Sevastopol in Russian. Founded 1783 as home port of Russian Black Sea Fleet. Strategic importance, only Russian war-mortar naval base with direct access to Mediterranean. Controls Black Sea. Projects Russian naval power. Contains naval headquarters, submarine facilities, surface ship piers, ammunition depots, repair facilities, air defense installations, thousands of personnel. Captured by Russia 2014 during Crimea annexation. Heavily fortified since then. Russia invested billions in infrastructure, defenses, command and control. This isn't just naval base. This is symbol of Russian military power. Losing it, or even having it severely damaged, would be strategic and psychological catastrophe. Storm Shadow missile, Anglo-French designed long-range cruise missile. Britain and France supplied to Ukraine starting May 2023. Specifications: range 250 plus kilometers, export version, 5.1 meters long, 450 kilograms, broach tandem warhead designed to penetrate hardened targets, GPS/INS/terrain. Following guidance, infrared terminal seeker, subsonic speed Mach 0.8, low altitude flight profile, 30 to 50 meters above terrain, reduced radar cross-section. Cost, approximately $2 to $2.5 million per missile. Ukraine received limited quantity, exact numbers classified, estimated 50 to 200 missiles total from UK and France. Each missile is precious, cannot be wasted, must hit high-value targets. Sevastopol Naval Headquarters qualifies. Russian air defense around Sevastopol, September 2023. Among densest in the world. S-400 Triumph long-range systems, 400 kilometers range against aircraft, 60 kilometers against cruise missiles. S-300 variants, 150 to 200 kilometers against aircraft, 40 kilometers against cruise missiles. Pantsir S one-point defense, 20 kilometers range, designed specifically to intercept cruise missiles.
naval air defense from ships in harbor, additional layer. Electronic warfare systems to jam guidance. Radar coverage overlapping. Command and control integrated. This defense should, in theory, create virtually impenetrable bubble over Sevastopol. Should detect Storm Shadow at 100 plus kilometers. Should track. Should engage.
Should intercept. Should prevent strikes on critical facilities. Should. This word matters, because what should happen and what does happen are about to diverge catastrophically for Russia. 3 questions. We'll answer them at the end. Do Sevastopol strikes prove that modern long-range precision weapons can reliably penetrate even the most sophisticated air defenses, fundamentally changing warfare? Or was this a perfect storm of factors that won't easily repeat? Could Russia have prevented the strikes through better air defense employment, tactics, or technology? Or are there inherent limitations to defending against cruise missiles that make such strikes inevitable? And the critical one, do these strikes represent genuine Ukrainian capability to systematically target Russian strategic assets deep in occupied territory? Or are they limited high-profile attacks that achieve psychological impact without changing military balance? Ukrainian narrative emphasizes strategic capability, demonstrates Ukraine can strike Russian command and control anywhere in occupied territories. Storm Shadow validates Western weapon supplies, forces Russia to disperse forces and worry about rear areas, builds Ukrainian morale, damaging Russian prestige. All true, but doesn't address sustainability. Can Ukraine repeat this regularly, or are strikes opportunistic? Russian official response initially claimed attacks failed or were intercepted. Then admitted headquarters was hit but claimed minimal damage. Then claimed Admiral Sokolov survived after initially appearing on casualty lists. Then shifted to claiming attacks are terrorism against Crimea, Russian annexed, internationally recognized as Ukrainian. The shifting narratives reveal confusion and propaganda damage control. When a military has coherent explanation, they give it immediately. When explanations keep changing, suggest they're trying to minimize embarrassing truth. Western intelligence assessment confirms strikes hit intended targets, confirms significant damage, confirms casualties including senior officers. Whether Sokolov survived is uncertain. Russian evidence is questionable, but his status doesn't change that headquarters was destroyed and command staff were killed. Strategic impact is real regardless of one admiral's fate. The strikes succeeded operationally, even if propaganda battles continue. Stay with me. What happens in the planning and execution reveals this wasn't lucky shot. This was systematic campaign exploiting specific Russian vulnerabilities. And understanding those vulnerabilities matters more than celebrating individual strike. Storm Shadow campaign against Sevastopol, May to September 2023. May 2023. Ukraine receives first Storm Shadow missiles from UK. Initial strikes target ammunition depots and logistics hubs. Testing systems. Learning limitations. Building experience. Conserving missiles for high-value targets. July to August 2023. Strikes intensify. Storm Shadow hits Chonhar Bridge, Crimea access. Ammunition depots, command posts. Pattern emerges. Ukrainian forces are systematically targeting Russian command and control, logistics, and infrastructure. Not random. Deliberate campaign. Each strike informed by previous one. Intelligence improving. Targeting becoming more precise. September 13th, 2023. The headquarters strike
Represents the culmination of multi-month campaign. Ukrainian forces have identified target, naval headquarters. Planned strike, timing, approach, missile allocation. Gathered intelligence, building layout, personnel locations, defenses. Executed mission, Su-24 launches. Storm Shadows navigate 250 kilometers. Penetrate air defense, hit target. Results, strategic success. But how did Storm Shadow penetrate Sevastopol air defense? Multiple factors. Factor 1, low altitude flight. Storm Shadow flies 30 to 50 meters above terrain, below radar horizon for most systems until very close. This reduces detection range from 100 plus kilometers to 20 Gives defense minimal reaction time. S-400 and S-300 are designed for high-altitude threats. Less effective against terrain-hugging cruise missiles. Factor 2. Reduced radar cross-section. Storm Shadow is designed with stealth features. Not full stealth like F-35, but reduced observability. Smaller radar return. Harder to detect and track than conventional missiles. Makes interception more difficult.
Factor 3. Terrain masking. Storm Shadow uses terrain-following navigation. Flies through valleys, around mountains. Uses terrain to mask radar signature. Sevastopol is surrounded by hills. Storm Shadow can approach using terrain, making detection even harder. Factor 4. Electronic warfare. Ukrainian forces may employ electronic warfare to jam or confuse Russian radar. Not confirmed publicly, but likely given sophistication of operation. Even partial jamming degrades air defense effectiveness. Factor 5. Saturation. Multiple Storm Shadows in single strike. Overwhelms air defense. If Russia can intercept 50 to 70% of missiles, but Ukraine launches 10, 3 to 5 still get through. Against point targets like headquarters, 3 to 5 hits is catastrophic. Numbers matter. Ukraine likely coordinated multiple missiles to ensure some penetrated defense. Factor 6. Tactical surprise. Russians knew Storm Shadow existed, but specific timing, route and target were unknown. Air defense must be ready constantly. Fatigue. Complacency. Gaps in coverage. Storm Shadow exploited moment of vulnerability. Perfect timing. Factor 7. Russian defensive failures. Possible gaps in radar coverage. Possible radar turned off to avoid anti-radiation missiles targeting emitters. Possible crew inattention. Possible system malfunctions. Air defense is complex. Many failure modes. Any one failure can allow penetration. All these factors combined. No single factor alone explains success. Together they created conditions where Storm Shadow penetrated supposedly impenetrable defense. This says his lesson. Layered defense is strong but not perfect. Sophisticated offense with good planning can penetrate. The question isn't if defense can be beaten. Question is, at what cost and how reliably? This is Millfront. Real tactics, real consequences. Impact of Sevastopol strikes. Immediate tactical impact. Black Sea Fleet headquarters severely damaged. Command and control disrupted. 34 plus officers killed, possibly including fleet commander, though Russia disputes. Submarine facilities destroyed. Operations postponed or cancelled. Fleet effectiveness degraded. This is measurable impact. Real casualties. Real damage. Real operational constraints. Operational impact. Russian Black Sea Fleet forced to disperse. Move headquarters function to safer locations. Increase air defense. Change operational patterns. All of this reduces efficiency, creates coordination problems, imposes costs, constrains Russian naval operations. Ukrainian forces gain relative advantage in Black Sea, even without engaging Russian ships directly. Strategic impact demonstrates Ukrainian capability to strike deep into Crimea, Russia's most fortified territory. If Sevastopol isn't safe, nowhere in occupied Ukraine is safe. Russian forces must worry about rear areas, must disperse, must fortify, cannot concentrate. This is strategic advantage. Forcing enemy to defend everywhere is nearly as good as attacking everywhere. Psychological impact, enormous. Ukrainian morale boost. They can strike Russia's prized naval base. Russian morale damage. Their best defenses failed. Symbolic importance of Sevastopol multiplies psychological effect. The base that represents Russian Black Sea dominance was humiliated. Symbol damaged. Prestige damaged. Confidence damaged. International perception. Ukraine demonstrates capability with Western weapons. Validates continued support. Shows Western long-range weapons are effective. Influences future aid decisions. Russia demonstrates vulnerability despite massive air defense investments. Questions about Russian military competence intensify. But strikes also have costs and limitations. Cost 1.
Missile inventory. Storm Shadow costs $2 to $2.5 million each. Ukraine has limited quantity, 50 to 200 total estimated. Each strike uses multiple missiles. Inventory depletes. Cannot sustain high tempo indefinitely. Must choose targets carefully. High-value targets only. Cost 2. Aircraft risk. Su-24. Launching Storm Shadow must fly relatively close, within 250 kilometers, within range of Russian air defense and fighters. Aircraft are vulnerable during launch. Losing Su-24 would be significant. Ukraine has limited numbers. Each mission is risk. Cost 3. Intelligence requirements. Targeting. Sevastopol requires excellent intelligence. Building locations.
Timing when important personnel are present. Air defense positions. Routes to minimize detection. Intelligence gathering is difficult and dangerous. Some intelligence possibly provided by Western partners. Satellite imagery signals intelligence. But dependency on external intelligence is vulnerability. Cost 4. Russian adaptation. After each strike, Russia adapts. Improves air defense. Moves targets. Hardens facilities. Disperses operations. Each successive strike becomes harder. Pattern of diminishing returns possible. Early strikes may be most effective. Later strikes face improved defenses. Cost 5. Escalation risk. Striking Russian naval headquarters in Crimea is escalatory. Russia views Crimea as Russian territory, despite international law. Strikes there may trigger Russian escalation elsewhere. Possible retaliation against Ukrainian cities, infrastructure, or even NATO support facilities. Escalation spiral is dangerous. Cost 6. Strategic focus. Resources devoted to Sevastopol strikes are resources not used elsewhere. Opportunity cost matters. Could Storm Shadow missiles achieve more targeting Russian logistics, command posts elsewhere? Or is symbolic impact of Sevastopol worth concentrating firepower? Debatable. Let's answer the 3 questions now. Do Sevastopol strikes prove long-range precision weapons reliably penetrate sophisticated air defenses? Partially, with important caveats. Strikes prove penetration is possible even against dense air defense. But not that it's easy, cheap, or guaranteed. Factors enabling success. Evidence for Storm Shadow penetrated S-400/Desme 300/Pantsir network, defending Sevastopol. This is among world's most sophisticated air defense. Success proves concept. Precision weapons with stealth features, terrain following, and good tactics can penetrate layered defense. Evidence against required multiple missiles, expensive. Required perfect intelligence, hard to obtain. Required good planning, time intensive. Success rate unclear. We see successes. Russia doesn't publicize intercepts. Maybe survivorship bias. Possibly 30 to 50% of Storm Shadows are intercepted, but we only see the ones that hit. Cost per successful strike may be $10 to $20 million. Multiple missiles. Nuanced conclusion. Modern precision weapons can penetrate sophisticated defenses, but not reliably or cheaply enough to make defense obsolete. This is offense-defense balance. Offense got better, Storm Shadow. Defense must improve, better radar, more point defense, redundancy. Neither side has decisive advantage. Both continue adapting. This is normal warfare dynamics, not revolution. Could Russia have prevented strikes through better employment? Probably not completely prevented, but could have reduced effectiveness significantly. Russian improvements that might help. Improvement 1. More point defense. Deploy more Pantsir systems around critical facilities. Pantsir is specifically designed for cruise missile intercept. More coverage increases interception probability. But expensive. Each system costs millions. Russia has finite inventory and many sites to protect. Improvement 2. Better radar coverage. Ensure no gaps in low-altitude radar coverage, or use aerostats, tethered balloons with radar, to cover dead zones. Requires investment and maintenance. Possible but not done adequately. Improvement 3. Active defense. Fighter patrols intercepting Storm Shadow. Difficult. Storm Shadow is small, low, fast, but possible with good radar cueing. Russia has fighters but didn't effectively use for missile intercept. Improvement 4. Passive defense. Harden facilities. Move headquarters underground. Disperse operations. Makes facilities more survivable even if hit. Russia did some hardening but inadequate. Improvement 5. Better intelligence. Detect Ukrainian launches earlier. Track Storm Shadow flight path. Improve response time. Requires better ISR, better command and control, better training. Russia could do these things. But each costs money, requires resources, takes time, has limitations. No perfect defense exists. Determined attacker with good weapons and tactics can usually penetrate if willing to accept costs. Question is whether cost-benefit favors attacker or defender. At Sevastopol, favored attacker, Ukraine. Elsewhere might favor defender, Russia. Context dependent. And the critical question, do strikes represent systematic Ukrainian capability or limited high-profile attacks? Between these extremes but closer to limited capability, Ukrainian forces can strike Sevastopol and other high-value targets, but cannot do so frequently or in high volume. Limitations. Systematic capability indicators. Multiple, successful strikes over months. Improving precision and intelligence. Surviving Russian countermeasures. Coordinating complex operations. These suggest genuine institutional capability, not luck. Limited capability indicators. Small missile inventory, 50 to 200 Storm Shadow total. High cost per strike, $5 to $20 million depending on missile numbers. Long planning required. Cannot strike continuously. Must conserve missiles for highest value targets. Dependent on Western supplies. If UK/France stop providing, capability evaporates. Synthesis. Ukraine has capability to conduct limited campaign of high-value strikes. Maybe 5 to 15 major strikes per month, depending on target and available missiles. Enough to create strategic effects, forcing Russian dispersal, hitting command posts, destroying key facilities. Not enough to systematically destroy Russian military throughout occupied territories. The capability is real but constrained. Impact is psychological and operational, more than purely material. Cannot physically destroy Russian Black Sea Fleet, but can degrade its effectiveness and morale significantly. Therefore, this is meaningful capability-changing operational reality, not game-changing capability deciding war's outcome. Influence is significant but not decisive, which is actually optimal outcome for Ukraine. Achieves effects without expending unsustainable resources or inviting uncontrolled escalation. The quiz answer: what most enabled Storm Shadow success at Sevastopol? Combination of offensive sophistication and defensive gaps. 50-50 split. Storm Shadow capabilities matter: low altitude flight, reduced signature, terrain following, precision guidance, penetrating warhead. Without these, strikes fail regardless of Russian defensive lapses. Good weapon is necessary. Russian defensive gaps matter equally. Coverage holes, possible complacency, inadequate point defense density, perhaps EW jamming by Ukraine, possibly intelligence compromise. Without these gaps, Storm Shadow likely intercepted despite capabilities. Defensive weakness is necessary. Neither alone sufficient. Both necessary. This is warfare reality. Success requires doing things right, an enemy doing things wrong. Rare for one side to be so dominant, they succeed despite enemy perfection. Usually success comes from good execution, exploiting enemy mistakes. Sevastopol exemplifies this perfectly. This is Millfront. Subscribe to Millfront, because strategy determines outcomes. September 13th, 2023. Sevastopol strike summary. Missiles used. Storm Shadow cruise missiles, quantity unclear, likely 6 to 10 missiles. Distance 250 plus kilometers from launch to target. Target Black Sea Fleet headquarters, submarine facilities. Result: headquarters severely damaged, 34 plus officers killed, facilities destroyed Russian air defense. Failed to intercept despite S-400/S 300/Pantsir coverage. Cost estimated $10 to $20 million. Missiles. Snai Kwazin, one highly successful Operation Strategic Impact. Black Sea Fleet command disrupted, submarine operations constrained. Russian forces must disperse and worry about rear areas. Ukrainian morale boost, Russian morale damage, international validation of Western weapons supplies, escalation concerns but managed thus far. The strike that demonstrated long-range precision weapons can penetrate layered air defense with proper employment. Rear areas are not safe. Air defense is necessary but not sufficient. Offense-defense balance continues, favoring whichever side adapts faster. Modern warfare rewards sophistication and systematic approach over pure firepower or defense density. Lessons for militaries worldwide at Sanjimurim. Invest in long-range precision strike capability, layer air defense, but recognize it's not impenetrable. Protect high-value assets through dispersion and hardening, not just defense. Intelligence enables targeting. Invest accordingly. Symbolic targets matter. Psychological impact multiplies tactical success. Escalation management is critical when striking deep into adversary territory. Was Sevastopol's strike most significant Ukrainian deep strike of war? Strong candidate. Others include Crimean Bridge twice, Saki Air Base, multiple ammunition depots. Sevastopol stands out for distance, 250 kilometers. Target value, naval headquarters. Air defense penetration, most sophisticated defenses. Casualties, senior officers, including